You crawl into bed hoping for intimacy, but what you get feels like lying next to a corpse. Cold, lifeless. A woman who once begged for your touch now flinches like your poison. And the worst part? You don't understand why. You've racked your brain. You've searched for answers. There's no secret lover. No health crisis. Nothing obvious to blame. She just doesn't want you anymore. Not your hands, not your body, not your Dajin. Yet she doesn't leave either. Divorce? Off the table. She's perfectly fine coexisting like business partners who share bills, kids, and a roof. A marriage in form, but dead where it matters most. You're stuck in a silent hell where passion has been buried, and you're the only one who seems to notice the funeral. You lie there every night, restless, rejected, burning with questions that never stop. What killed her desire? Can it ever come back? Or is this the reality I'm doomed to live with? If that feels like your story, don't look away. Because what I'm about to reveal isn't some sugar-coated advice about date nights or flowers. This is the brutal, psychological truth behind why your wife's desire died, and why no amount of trying harder will ever bring it back, unless you finally understand what destroyed it in the first place. Her desire didn't vanish overnight. It wasn't stolen by another man. It wasn't killed by hormones or medical issues. What died was the fantasy she built of you. And once that dream collapsed, her sexual desire collapsed with it. See, women rarely fall in love with the man standing in front of them. They fall in love with a version of you living in their imagination, a projection, a story they write in their heads about who you'll become, what you'll achieve, how life with you will look. In the beginning, you were less a man and more a possibility. She saw potential. She saw a future version of you she could worship. That future man lit her body on fire. Her fantasies of him fueled her passion. Her desire wasn't born from who you were, but from who she believed you might become. And for a while, reality played along. The early days of passion, of newness, of excitement. It was easy for her to believe you were the man she had imagined. Every kiss, every touch, every word seemed to confirm her dream. But reality has sharp edges, and it always cuts through fantasy. With time, the mask falls. The real you emerged. And here's the unflinching truth. The real you was just you. A normal man. Flawed, average, ordinary. And that's not what her mind had scripted. Day after day, year after year, disappointment dripped like poison into her veins. You didn't reach the heights she silently assumed you would. You didn't become the prince her heart once projected onto you. You didn't conquer the world in the way she believed you could. And she would never admit this out loud, not even to herself. But deep inside, she felt cheated. Cheated by her own imagination, trapped by her own illusions. But instead of turning that blame inward, her mind turned it on you. In her story, you deceived her. You tricked her into a life smaller than the one she dreamed of. And once you became the villain in her fantasy, how could she possibly still want you? How can a woman feel lust for the man who symbolizes the death of her dreams? Imagine her scrolling through social media, watching her friends flaunt vacations, bigger houses, husbands climbing ladders of success. Every image is another dagger. Every comparison is another reminder that her fantasy died with you. She doesn't see the man who is faithful, loyal, present. None of that matters anymore. She only sees the man who failed to become her imagined savior. And under the weight of that disappointment, desire suffocates. You might be thinking, That's unfair. I never promised her a fantasy. I never lied about being a prince. And you're right. But fairness doesn't matter in the psychology of desire. The truth is crueler. She created her own illusion and then punished you for failing to match it. And as that resentment brewed, her body slowly shut down toward you. The spark that once felt unstoppable burned out, not because you became less of a man, but because you never became the man she hallucinated in the first place. Here's what you need to understand. Her attraction was never about the real you. It was about the story. And when the story collapsed, the passion collapsed with it. Desire can't survive when reality falls short of imagination. And once she saw the gap between who you are and who she dreamed you'd be, that gap became a grave where her sexuality toward you was buried. This is why you feel like you've been exiled from her body. This is why your touch now feels intrusive instead of irresistible. It's not that she stopped wanting sex. It's that she stopped wanting sex with you. Because to her, you are no longer a man. You're a reminder, a symbol of lost dreams, broken projections, shattered fantasies. And every time you reach for her, you remind her of what never came true. That is the first killer of her desire. And it's not small. It's not fixable with flowers, chores, or romantic dinners. Because you're not fighting her body. You're fighting her mind. And once her mind buried the fantasy version of you, her desire was buried with it. If this truth is hitting you, don't just scroll past it. Subscribe now, because what comes next will cut even deeper. And trust me, you don't want to miss the rest of this. If fantasy was the first killer of her desire, broken trust is the second. And no, I'm not talking about cheating. I'm not talking about affairs or secret messages. The kind of trust I'm talking about is quieter, smaller, but deadlier. Emotional trust, psychological trust, the kind that makes a woman feel safe enough to let go with you, to be vulnerable, to surrender in sex. When that crumbles, her desire doesn't just weaken, it evaporates. Here's what men never see. Every time a woman shows you something raw about herself, she's testing the ground under her feet. It might be silly. It might be strange. It might sound trivial. But to her, it's nakedness. And she's watching carefully. Will you hold it, or will you break it? When she confessed that quirky hobby and you laughed, brick in the wall. When she introduced you to her friends and you made it clear you thought they weren't good enough, another brick. When she shared a dream, an ambition, or a fear, and you dismissed it with logic instead of emotion, another brick. None of these moments were explosive, but stacked together, they built the prison where her desire went to die. You probably thought you were just joking, or being rational, or even helpful. But what she felt was rejection. 1,000 tiny cuts telling her she was never truly safe with you. And the irony? She stayed. She played the role. She kept showing up as wife, as mother, as partner. But she stopped showing up as lover. Because a lover requires openness, vulnerability, trust. And you killed that trust one shrug, one laugh, one careless comment at a time. Women are not logical about sex. They can't be. For them, sex isn't about friction, it's about surrender. And surrender demands safety. If she feels judged by you in daily life, how can she undress her soul in the bedroom? If she feels unseen or unworthy when she shares her dreams, how can she feel desirable when she shares her body? She can't. So, she shuts down. She closes the door. She hides herself from you, piece by piece, until there's nothing left for you to touch. And here's the part that hurts most. She didn't stop being vulnerable. She just stopped being vulnerable with you. The pieces of herself she once offered to you, she now buries deep or gives to others. Her friends, her sisters, sometimes even strangers online. Not sexually, but emotionally. Because they listen, they validate. They don't laugh at her silly ideas or belittle her feelings. And every time someone else makes her feel seen, the gap between you grows wider. You're still in the same house. You still share meals. You still share bills. But she no longer shares herself. You became the man she performs around, not the man she trusts. And here's the dark truth. A woman cannot orgasm for a man she doesn't trust. She cannot crave a man who makes her hide. She cannot desire someone who feels like an enemy to her real self. So she tolerates you. She lives beside you. She even smiles at you. But she no longer opens to you. And when you reach for her at night, her body stiffens. Not because she hates sex, but because sex with you requires a level of surrender she no longer believes you deserve. This is why her desire died a second death. Not in a dramatic explosion, but in a quiet erosion. 1,000 small dismissals, 1,000 missed chances to prove she was safe with you. Each one invisible in the moment, but together, lethal. You thought you were just living life. She felt you were telling her, over and over, who you are is not enough for me. And no woman can give her body to a man who made her feel that truth. If broken trust poisons desire, resentment buries it for good. Because women don't just get hurt and move on. They collect. They store. They archive. Every small wound becomes part of a museum inside their minds. And once that museum is full, there's no room left for desire. Here's what you don't realize. When you forgot her birthday that one year, she stored it. When you chose your buddies over her that weekend, stored. When you glanced a second too long at another woman, stored. Every joke at her expense, every comment about her family, every careless word you thought was nothing. Stored. You may not even remember them, but she does, and while you moved on, she polished them like stones, adding them to her collection. Over time, this collection became her identity. She is the woman wronged by you. She is the long-suffering wife who endured your failures. She is the martyr who sacrificed joy for family stability. And martyrs don't desire. Victims don't crave their oppressors. They endure them. They tolerate them. But lust? Gone. You're not her lover anymore. You're the man at the center of her museum of grievances. And every time she looks at you, she sees not the present moment, but every wound she's ever stored. The cruel part is most of these resentments were never spoken. She didn't tell you when they happened. She didn't give you a chance to explain or apologize. She just locked them away. Maybe because she thought you wouldn't care. Maybe because she didn't want another dismissal. But silence doesn't erase resentment. It multiplies it. And now, years later, you're fighting ghosts you don't even know exist. This is why nothing you do now works. You think bringing flowers will erase a decade of stored anger. You think one vacation can undo 10 years of disappointment. But she's not responding to the present. She's living in the past. A past she's carefully curated to remind herself why she doesn't want you. That's the brutal truth. And it gets worse. She's not carrying this resentment alone. She shares it. She bonds with other women over it. At lunch with friends, at wine nights, in group chats, she vents about you. And they validate her. They nod. They agree. They pile on their own stories. Together, they create a chorus of male inadequacy, And every time she hears, "You deserve better," her resentment hardens. Every conversation adds another brick to the wall between you. Every validation tells her she's right to stop desiring you. Meanwhile, you're in the dark. You feel the distance, but you don't know why. You feel the coldness, but you can't trace it back. Because the list is invisible to you. It's invisible because she never gave you the chance to see it. And that invisibility is what makes it lethal. By now, the resentment isn't just part of her. It is her. It colors everything you do. If you help around the house, it's not enough. If you plan something special, it's too late. If you try to be affectionate, it feels fake. Nothing breaks through because in her mind, you're already guilty. Not for one thing, but for a lifetime of things. This is why her body turns away from you. Not because of sex itself, but because desire cannot coexist with resentment. Lust cannot bloom in soil poisoned by years of unspoken anger. And you can't fix it because you can't erase what you don't even know is there. She doesn't see you as her man anymore. She sees you as the living reminder of everything she's ever resented. And no woman wants to sleep with her resentment. That's the third killer. That's why every touch now feels like another debt she refuses to pay. She doesn't see intimacy as connection anymore. She sees it as betrayal to herself. And when resentment becomes her identity, desire is not just dead. It's impossible. This next killer is the most tragic because it happens in almost every relationship, and nobody talks about it. I call it sexual deception. The silent game both of you played in the beginning. The game that started with moans and smiles and ended with her body shutting down completely. Think back to when you first had sex. You weren't yourself. You were performing. You were trying to be the stallion, the great lover who could blow her mind. And she was performing too. She was the sex goddess, the woman who was always ready, always eager, always thrilled by whatever you did. It wasn't real. It was a show, and you both played your parts well. Here's the cruel twist. When you did something she didn't like, she didn't say a word. She didn't stop you. She didn't tell you, "That doesn't feel good." Instead, she moaned louder. She kissed you harder. She tricked you into believing you'd found the key to her pleasure. And you doubled down. You perfected moves she secretly hated. You repeated the very things that turned her off. You thought you were nailing it, but in reality, you were digging the grave of her desire. Year after year, that deception built a prison. Maybe she dropped hints. Maybe she tried to redirect you. But by then, you were trained by her fake reactions. You didn't hear the hints because you thought you already had the formula. Or maybe she stayed silent completely, convincing herself she'd learned to like it. But she never did. Every sexual encounter became an ordeal, something to endure, not enjoy. Eventually, her body started betraying her mind. Every time you touched her, she tensed. Every time you tried to initiate, she looked for excuses. Too tired, too stressed, too busy, too sick. She became an expert at avoiding you, staying up late, going to bed early, pretending headaches, pretending fatigue. But those pretend excuses slowly became real. Her nervous system began rejecting sex with you the same way the body rejects poison. Sometimes, women even develop conditions like vaginismus, their bodies literally shutting the door. The mind can lie, but the body never does. And then comes the moment of truth, the day she finally confesses, maybe in tears, maybe in anger. She admits she never liked what you did in bed. She admits the moans were fake. The orgasms, Fake. The enthusiasm? Fake. And suddenly, your entire sexual history feels like a betrayal. You thought you were a good lover. She tells you it was all an act. Imagine that blow. Imagine realizing every moment you thought was passion was actually endurance. It destroys both of you. You feel lied to, humiliated, made into a fool. She feels guilty but also relieved to drop the mask. And with that confession, the last thread of intimacy snaps. The sexual relationship, already on life support, dies completely. But here's the darkest truth of all. Many women never actually experienced real desire for their husbands, not even in the beginning. What you thought was lust might have been performance. She might have been trying to lock you down, to prove she was the perfect partner. She might have been convincing herself that desire would come later. But it didn't, because her entire sexuality was built on performance, not authenticity. And the longer the act went on, the more trapped she felt. That performance became her prison. She played the role of the passionate woman so long, she couldn't tell where the act ended and her truth began. And when she finally stopped pretending, there was nothing left. Just exhaustion. Just avoidance. Just a sexless marriage where the absence of intimacy feels safer than the act itself. So now, she stays. She shares your home. She shares your kids. She shares your life. But she no longer shares her body. Divorce is too messy, too expensive, too complicated. And sex with you? That feels unbearable. So she chooses the middle ground, a stable marriage without intimacy, and you're left staring at the ceiling at night, wondering why her body feels like a locked vault. That is the fourth killer. Not cheating, not illness, but years of sexual deception that mutated into sexual death. And once her body has shut you out, no amount of trying harder can bring it back. And so here you are, living in what people politely call a dead bedroom, a marriage that exists everywhere except between the sheets. A relationship with bills, kids, schedules, responsibilities, but without passion, without intimacy, without life. She shares your house. She shares your meals. She shares your last name. But she does not share her desire. Not anymore. She has buried it. And the most devastating part? She's fine with that. She's made peace with a sexless existence. She doesn't see it as a tragedy. She sees it as balance, stability, safety. You're the only one suffering. You're the only one pacing the floor at night, wondering how things got this far. You're the only one still hoping for revival. Because for her, revival isn't even on the table. She's chosen acceptance over effort. She's chosen resentment over vulnerability. She's chosen stability over passion. To her, sexlessness is not a problem. It's a solution. You try to fight it. You buy flowers. You plan dinners. You pick up extra chores. You Google how to rekindle passion. You read articles that tell you to try date nights, to communicate, to experiment. But nothing works, because you're trying to resurrect something that isn't just dead. It's decomposed. The body is gone. The soul is gone. There's nothing left to revive. And here's the darkest reality. The absence of sex has become more comfortable to her than sex itself ever was. That silence, that distance, it's easier for her than performing again. It's easier than pretending. It's easier than confronting the resentment, the broken trust, the fantasy that shattered years ago. The void has become her refuge. Could this have been prevented? Maybe. If she had been brutally honest about her fantasies instead of projecting them, if you had been able to hear her truth without dismissing it, if the small resentments had been resolved before they piled up into a mountain, if sex had been real instead of a performance. But that level of honesty, that level of courage, it almost never happens. Not in most marriages, not in yours. So here you are, sleeping next to a woman who used to want you, but no longer does. And the cruelest twist? She doesn't even want to want you. She's not fighting for desire. She's not craving its return. She's chosen to bury it. She's built a new identity around its absence. She's a wife, a mother, a partner in life, but not a lover. And she's fine with that. You, on the other hand, are not fine. You're suffocating in a house that looks like a marriage, but feels like a tomb. You crave a spark that no longer exists. You ache for a touch that will never come. You long for intimacy with someone who has already shut the door. And every time you reach for her, she recoils. Not because she hates you, but because she associates you with disappointment, with broken trust, with resentment, with years of unwanted sex. This is the brutal truth. Your wife doesn't desire you. Not because you're undesirable, but because in her mind, you've become the symbol of everything she lost. Every dream that didn't come true. Every fantasy that collapsed. Every wound that festered. Every night of fake moans and forced smiles. You are not a man to her anymore. You are a reminder. And can this be resurrected? Maybe, but only if she wanted it. And she doesn't. She has made peace with the funeral of desire. She has chosen her equilibrium in this sexless purgatory. So the real question isn't whether you can bring it back. The real question is whether you can live with this reality, or whether you will finally find the courage to seek something different. Because desire doesn't die in one moment. It dies by 1,000 cuts. And once it's gone, the only thing left is the silence of a marriage that looks alive on paper, but feels dead in your bed. Don't just sit there in silence. Drop a comment. Tell me if you've lived this, if you've felt this, or if you're stuck in it right now. Share this with the men who need to hear the truth no one else will tell them. And if you want more raw, unfiltered breakdowns of relationships, sex, and desire, hit that subscribe button. Because this channel isn't about fairy tales. It's about exposing the brutal reality most people are too scared to say out loud.